Start. Okay. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining Friday Motzaei Shabbos so late. And thank Judith for inspiring that we tell a story before we start our halacha class. So actually a few stories, but this story is connected very much to this week's parsha. It's brought down actually in the teachings of the Alter Rebbe in the Likutei Torah. When the Alter Rebbe talks about the laws of Orla. So the idea, he talks about what does it mean to praise Hashem. So he quotes the teaching of the holy Baal Shem Tov that says, V'ata Kodesh, Hashem, you're Kodesh and separate. Yoshev, what brings you present into the world is Tehillas Yisrael, is through the praise of the Jewish people. So the previous Lubavitch Rebbe tells a story that the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is connected with the story. That the Baal Shem Tov, holy Baal Shem Tov, before he revealed himself, we know, he would travel from city to city, place to place, village to village, dressed as a simple shepherd, didn't give off any impression that he was a Talmud Chacham, scholar, a holy person, tzaddik. And he would inspire the Jewish people with different ways about Hashem, teachings of the Medrash, etc., and Gemaras, and in Yaakov, and bringing out the love the Jewish people have for Hashem, even the most difficult times that they lived in at the time. And one of the main ideas about Shem Tov wanted to hear from men, women, children, young, old, was for them to say Baruch Hashem, thank God, Shevach Lakel. He would ask them, how are you doing? How's your parnasa? How's your livelihood? How's your brius? How's your health? And he would want to hear them to respond Baruch Hashem, or something like that, thanking Hashem for their health, for their parnasa, for different questions of things that they needed or that they had in their lives in the physical sense. So that, and he would get tremendous nachas, joy, when people would answer Baruch Hashem. One time he goes to a city, and in that city there was a Parush. If I'm not mistaken, I think in the letters of the previous Rebbe, his name was, I think, Chaim Parush, and he was, Parush means a person that's cut off. He lived 50 years already. He was living he had a very small house. He and his wife and maybe small family shared. He had a place that they gave him in the synagogue in the shul, in the back room, where no one bothered him. And he sat literally day and night and learned in his talis and tefillin. There were people like that called a parush. They were totally cut off. And he was learning for 50 years. He would eat a little bit of bread at night with water, mamish, just to stay alive. It was just, that was the way he lived his life. The Baal Shem Tov made his way into this person's room, and he says to the parush, how is everything? How's your parnasa? How is your livelihood? How is your gesund? And the parush totally ignores the Baal Shem Tov. A person standing in front of him. Those days there was a big difference in the social levels between a scholar and a simple person. It was that gap was bridged later by the Baal Shem Tov after he revealed himself. So he said, how are you? How's everything? So he said, he didn't answer him. So he asked him again, how are you? He asked him a third time, how are you? He doesn't answer. How's your gesund? How's your... Finally, the parush gets so annoyed, he points at the door and he tells to the Baal Shem Tov, as if he's telling him to leave the room. So the Baal Shem Tov looks at the parush and he says in Yiddish, goes, why are you stealing from God his parnasa? Why are you taking God's parnasa? When he said those words, the parush was jolted. Here's a person dressed as a simple shepherd, is talking about God, and he says, how are you stealing God's parnasa? So the Baal Shem Tov continued. He says, we say Ata Kodesh, that God is separate. How is he Yoshev? How do we bring him in the world? Tehillas Yisrael, when we say Baruch Hashem, when a person says Baruch Hashem, someone asks him, how's your health? You say Baruch Hashem. Someone asks you, how's your parnasa? You say Baruch Hashem. That makes God present in the world. And that's his parnasa. That's his livelihood. Because the Jewish people get blessings from Hashem. And therefore we have, and Hashem gives us parnasa and he gives us gesund. But Hashem wants to hear back Baruch Hashem. And when we say Baruch Hashem, it inspires God to give us more parnasa and more gesund. The story ends over there in the Rebbe's talk of this week, but if I remember correctly in the letter, it says at the end this person became a big follower, a chassid of the Holy Baal Shem Tov. Another story I wanted to tell about the Vishnu Rebbe. His name is Rabbi Yisrael Hager. This story happened maybe 100, 120 years ago. that in his city, in visions, I guess, so the visions of Rebbe had a custom that every night after he finished doing what he was doing, his day, his schedule, he would take a walk, and accompanied by his gabbai. So one night he takes a walk, and he stops outside the house of a very important banker manager, who was also far from any kind of chassid. Not just that, he was from the maskilim, he was from the enlightened people, which were anti the religious, anti the firm, and definitely anti the visions of Rebbe and his chassidim. And the attendant is wondering, why would the Rebbe stop outside this person's house? And then the Rebbe climbs the steps, knocks on the door. The attendant is mamish wondering what's going on. And the banker opens the door and he sees the visions of Rebbe, and his look is as shocked as that of the gabbai, of the attendant. And of course he welcomes in the visions of Rebbe, and he sits him down he brings him a cup of water or tea, and he's waiting for the visions of Rebbe Yisrael Hager, to tell him why he's here. He obviously came for a reason. And he's just sitting there. The Rebbe's just sitting there. He's sitting there and he's sitting there, not saying a word. Finally, the banker excuses himself, and he kind of hints to the gabbai to follow him to the kitchen. He says, "What's going on? Why is the visions of Rebbe here?" So he goes, "I have no idea. Yeah, he came, he stopped here, and I'm with him. I have no idea." So the banker goes back and he sits next to the visions of Rebbe, and he says, he doesn't say nothing. He's not going to be disrespectful. And after a long, long silence, the Rebbe gets up and says, "Thank you much for hosting me." And he gets ready and he leaves the house. This banker is so shocked, doesn't understand what's going on. So he follows the visions of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe walks back home. Like he's wondering, what's this all mean? Finally, the visions of the Rebbe is about to go into his home, and the banker says, "Rebbe, I can't hold back, because when you're in my house, I would never ask you what you're doing here. It's not nice, it's not polite, but I must ask, what was this whole visit about? You came and you sat in my house, didn't open your mouth, didn't say a word." So he goes, I came to your house to fulfill a mitzvah. So it's just like there's a mitzvah to say something if you know the person needs to hear and is ready to act on it. So too, our rabbis teach us it's a mitzvah to not say something if you know the person is not going to listen to you. There's no reason to say something if it's not going to be effective. So I had something to say to you, but I know you wouldn't listen. So I decided to sit with you so I could fulfill the mitzvah of not saying something. So the banker says, "What are you talking about? What did you think that you had to ask me that you couldn't ask me?" Because I can't tell you, because I would lose my mitzvah. But the banker, of course, his curiosity is very strong, and he can't understand what is it the visions Rebbe would possibly want from him that he doesn't believe he could help him with. If he thinks he could help him, you're just getting mamish right. Finally, he begs the Rebbe. He says, "Please, I must know, what is it you wanted to ask me? What you thought I wouldn't listen?" So I'll tell you. He said, "A woman comes to me this morning, an old." A young almana, a widow, and she's a young widow, and she just got a notice from your bank that she's going to have a foreclosure. She can't pay her mortgage, and your bank is going to foreclose on her house. And she's an almana, she's a widow with children, and I would have wanted you to take care of it, that she shouldn't be thrown out. But I don't think you would listen to me. So I decided I'm just going to at least have the mitzvah of sitting in your presence and not asking you to take care of the mortgage or to figure out a way." So the banker goes, "Rabbi, what are you talking about? I don't own the bank. I'm just the manager of the bank. I can't get involved. If a woman doesn't pay, I have to do my job." So the Rebbe says, "See, I told you wouldn't listen, so I didn't say." And the Rebbe walked into his house and closed the door. The banker was so tormented by the story, because he at the end of the week, he himself, from his own money, paid the woman's mortgage and brought it up to date, what have you, and made sure that she would not get her eviction. So, like they say, silence speaks. At the end, the Rebbe was successful in getting this banker to take care of this huge, tremendous mitzvah of helping an almana. Okay, so those are two stories we told this week. Now we have a few minutes. About 20 minutes, let's learn some Shulchan Aruch. So we're learning the laws of davening, of the different additions we have to add to the Tefillah, like blessings of the rain, etc. So I think we learned law 3, but we'll just do it over again quickly. So yesh mekaymus, there's places, and like we said, Rebecca said in her minhag is not to have it, is Bekayitz in the summer, which is the months we're now, we say Mashiv Haruach Moridatol. Our custom in Chabad is Moridatol, but some people have Mashiv Haruach Moridatol. In the winter, we say Mashiv Haruach Moridageshem. We bless God for giving us rain. What happens in Tov V'Omer King Gam B'Chorv? What happens if you say Mashiv Haruach Moridatol into the winter? You forget that we switch over to Moridageshem, to blessing for rain, and we bless for dew, right? So he says, lawyers in if you didn't remember until after you've said Baruch Hashem, you said Baruch Hashem, you're about to say Mechai Mesim. So Gomer HaBracha Mechai Mesim, Ve'in Tzarech Lachzer, B'Shvil Askar Segeshem. You don't have to go back to mention rain. Why? Because if you mention dew, so that's enough. If you remembered before you said Baruch Atah Hashem, so you say you should say Geshem, switch it in a place that's kind of in between subjects, like we said before. You can't just throw in a sentence in mid subject. Okay, footnote number 5. Mentioning dew is sufficiently similar to mentioning rain. So we did do this law last week. Let's start from law 4. What happens is the opposite. In the summer, either your nusach is not to say anything, or if your nusach is to say more at all, but instead you made a mistake and you say God who gives wind and the rain, and we ask for rain. You asked for rain in the summer. So if you remember that you asked for rain, or you blessed God for giving rain, which is kind of mentioning rain in the first bracha, in the second bracha, before you said Mechai Mesim. So then you start from At Gibber, you go back to At Gibber, and omit the Mashav Baruch Mordegeshim. You're not supposed to be saying that. He says this is not because the bracha is invalid, but so that it's apparent that the bracha does not include Mashav Baruch Mordegeshim. It's not because you made that the bracha is not good, but you want to make it that the bracha should not mention rain. But in this case, if you don't remember and you finish the blessing, so then you can't go back to the beginning of the second blessing. You have to start to the beginning of the first blessing, the beginning of the Shemoneh Esrei. So in the summer months, which we're in right now, and it's usually the first few weeks that a person could get forgetful about this, because it's a new change. So we have to be careful that not to say Mashav Baruch Mordegeshim. If we say it and we completed the bracha, then we have to go back to the beginning of davening, according to the Kitzur. If we have not completed the bracha, then we go back to At Gibber. Let's say you said Mashav Baruch, but you didn't say anything else. You didn't say, you mentioned the wind, you don't mention the rain. So any mazikal, that surely doesn't do any damage, especially according to the minhag that says that we say Mashav Baruch Mordegeshim. And you continue Mechal Kachayim, you don't have to correct it, you don't have to go back. And if in the morning of Shemoneh Esrei, when it's before we start mentioning rain, at that point you made a mistake and mentioned rain, basically 1 or 2 prayers early, so then just because it's already at the time, it just wasn't announced yet, so we continue with the blessings. Okay, now we're going to go to the footnote number 6. Although we do not add Mashav Baruch until Musaf, since, however, the entire day of Shemoneh Esrei is compatible with its inclusion, once you have said it, the bracha is not invalid. So again, you said it a few tefillas early, meaning Shemoneh Esrei is the time we say it by Musaf, we start adding grain. But if you by mistake added it already the night before, in the Arvit, the Ma'ariv of Shemoneh Esrei, or in the Shachris, so it's not its proper time, but we don't have to go back, because in theory it is the whole day. That's the day that we turn over to rain. Okay. Now the question is, this is a question where we have a difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, right? Everyone knows that we have the request for rain. There's a difference between the first blessing. The second blessing is when we're mentioning God, so to say, in praise. We praise the fact that God gives us rain. And we mention it in the time of the winter. And it's not the time to mention it in the summer. But we're not asking for rain. We're mentioning that God gives the rain. In this blessing of Baruch Aleinu is when we ask for things of Parnasa. And in that we have to include in the winter a bracha, the same Talmud of bracha, to ask for rain. So when do we start asking for rain? Not just mentioning rain. So we mention rain in Shemoneh Esrei, but when do we start asking for rain? And the reason is that we want to wait until people are home from the holiday, so they don't get the rain done, right? So in Eretz Yisrael, we start asking from Zayin Mar Cheshvan. But on Chutz La'aretz, it doesn't work like that. So when do we start asking for rain? Is Maschil Mem Talu Mater B'Tefillah Arvis Shoyom Shishim, the 60th day La'acher Tkufas Tishrei. From it's, I think, remind me, December. We'll find. I think we'll have the footnote over here. It turns out, the 5th of December. December. It's the 4th or the 5th of December. And we say we ask for rain from the 4th, 5th of December until the Pesach. And then for Pesach we stop asking for rain and we limit the quest for rain. Hold on a second. Let's bring up the Siddur. So in our Nusach over here is we say in the summer we say the same bracha, give blessing. We don't mention anything about rain or dew. And in the winter we say the same tal umatar of bracha. When we say it, the same tal umatar of bracha, asking for rain, is from the 60th day of the Tekufa. We'll see what that means in a second in the footnotes of Tishrei. It's the seasonal, and that's connected with the season. You know, it's connected with the sun, because in Judaism we go with the lunar calendar. But there's certain things that Tkufas are connected to the seasons, and the seasons is connected to the sun. So then it works out to be the 4th or the 5th of December, and we say it till Pesach. Okay. In footnote number 7, he says the names of the 4 seasons are Tkufas Nisan, which is spring, Tkufas Tammuz, which is the summer, Tkufas Tishrei, which is the fall, and Tkufas Teves, which is in the winter. So when do we start asking for rain? Again, the seasons go according to the sun. So we start asking for rain 60 days into the fall season. And that works out to be the 4th or 5th of December. In Eretz Yisrael, like I said before, the rain season begins earlier. And Tal Umata is said from the 7th of Cheshvan. That's the Gemara. We figured that's when the last person would get home. The author's dates were valid only until the year 1899. From 1900 until 2021, right? His Tal is begun on December 5th during the regular year, and on December 6th during the leap year. Okay, so that's why by us we nowadays it's not December 4th, but it's either December 5th or December 6th. And I'm not sure the cheshbon, how you work out the calculations, because the tkufos are its own calculation of the seasons. It seems like the seasons will be like this from 19 to 2100. So we're still in that time. Any questions on this? We move forward. Okay. Let's say you didn't ask for rain in the winter, whether it's December 5th, 6th, or Zayin Mar Cheshvan in Eretz Yisrael. If you remember before you finish this blessing, which is the blessing for Parnasa, which is Baruch Hashanim, Baruch Aleinu. So, then you add, you insert at that moment, wherever you remember, the same Talamat of Bracha al Pnei Adam V'Zabenu, and you finish the bracha properly. That's if you remember mid bracha. What happens then if you don't remember until you complete the bracha? So then so he says over here, if you do not remember until having completed the bracha, continue on And in the bracha of, you continue the next blessing, which is Tekabah Shofar Gadol, right? So you continue, and until in the bracha of Shema Koleinu, after we say Achar Reikam Al Tashivenu, don't turn us away empty-handed, where our nusach, it is in the part of so at the same time, there you insert it. So there's a special blessing of Shema Koleinu, which is kind of an open blessing. Why? And then you continue Ki'at Shemaya Tefillas Kopeh, which is, that's where you could add a bracha or any kind of request. You know, the rule is that you can't, according to most opinions, you could ask personal requests according to the content of the blessing. So if you have, let's say you have, you want to ask for health, you ask it in referral. If you want to ask for panasi, whatever the bracha you want to ask for. Then there's one bracha which is considered an open bracha, meaning that you could ask for anything, obviously normal, anything that's appropriate. So you could add. So in that place, if you forget to add, to ask for rain in the bracha of baruch of panasa, so you could add it after the words "Reikam Al Teshivenu," you say the same time about the bracha, and then you continue Ki'at Shemaya Tefillas Kopeh. If you didn't even say Baruch Atah Hashem of the bracha of Shema Koleinu, then you could say the same time of bracha Ki'at Shemaya. Again, you say Ki'at Shemaya Tefillas Kopeh. What happens if you forgot to ask for rain, and you only remember about it after you've completed mentioning God's name in the completion of Shema Koleinu? You have to go back from Baruch Aleinu and continue and go back and finish off the Shemoneh Esrei in order. And what happens if you don't remember about rain until after you've completed the whole Shemoneh Esrei, which is when you say the year L'Ratzon, and you have to daven from the beginning all over again. Okay, so we have basically different options. Option number one is, if we know number 8. No, 9 is later. Option number one is that you obviously say it properly. Option number 2 is that you could say it. You if you miss it. So we said that then you say in this recording bracha, you can say the same time about the bracha, and you finish it off. You add it back into the bracha, and you finish off the bracha. If you forget after you mention God's name, you insert it in Shema Koleinu until the end of Shema Koleinu. If you forget after you've completed Shema Koleinu, you go back to Baruch Aleinu and finish off Shemoneh Esrei. If you finish Shemoneh Esrei and you remember then that you forgot to say it, you have to start the whole Shemoneh Esrei again. What happens if we're not this season that we're in now, right? It's in the summer, and you've asked for rain, right? You remember you said the same time about the bracha in the summer in Baruch Aleinu. Then you have to again start Baruch Aleinu and omit it, take it out. We say the same bracha, whatever your nusach is. So here we say basically, if you added it in, then you have to start from Baruch Aleinu again, and if you finish the bracha, then so you have to go back to Baruch Aleinu. If you finish Shemoneh Esrei, you have to daven again, because you're not supposed to be asking for rain in the summer. Right? No footnotes on this one. So a few more, I'm just open for questions and complete the class. This happens all the time, unfortunately, because we're not always paying attention. It's normal, and you don't remember. You're not sure. You have a doubt. You're not sure if you said Masha V'roch or not. If this is already after 30 days of the change, and you've already davened 90 prayers, because 3 prayers a day, so 30 days is 90 prayers, and you don't know if you did or not, if you said Masha V'roch Mardi Geshem, so Cheskasa, we would assume that you prayed properly, because that's already what you're used to. If in the first 30 days, so I think now we're still in the first 30 days. Then you have to go back and pray, because if you don't remember, then chances are you made the mistake. The same thing applies to the blessing for rain in the Baruch Aleinu. If you don't know what you did, but it's after 30 days, then we'll go according to the Chazakah. We'll establish we'll assume the fact is that you did the right tefillah because it's already 90 prayers in. That you did it properly. If you don't remember, but if it's in the 30 days, then you have to go back and daven again. All right, footnote number 9. Footnote number 9. There's some confusion about the author's use of 30 days and 90 Shemoneh Esreis. All right, so why? Concerning Motzaei Shabbos, 90 Shemoneh Esreis will be reached in 29 days because of the additional Musaf on Shabbos. And Shabbos comes at least 4 times in every 30-day period. So again, to being exact, if you're talking about Motzaei Shabbos Mordei Geshem, so then 30 days is too much. It's 29 days. You've already prayed 90 prayers. Likewise, it has to take 34 to 35 days to have Talumater said 90 times because we omit the middle 13 brachas on Shabbos. So again, and then on the second blessing, a Baruch Aleinu, 30 days is not enough. Why? Because on every Shabbos we have different prayers. So those 3 prayers don't count. So Shabbos comes either 4 or 5 times in every 30 days. So again, we don't have 90 tefillos because we didn't say Baruch Aleinu 90 times because you can't count Shabbos. So what is it? So the Mishnah Berurah holds that we can rely on either number leniently. Thus, after 90 Shemoneh Esreis in 30 days, whichever comes first, we can assume that the Talmud Motzaei Shabbos has been established by habit. So the Mishnah Berurah kind of bridges the confusion. He says it's either or. Either if you've had already 90 prayers, or you've had 30 days. By that point, you've already we could assume you've already worked out what's the correct davening, and if you don't remember what you did, we'll assume that you did the right one. Okay, I think we're going to finish over here, unless there's any questions. I think what we learned today is pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you again so much for joining, and I think we're going to continue like this if there's a...
I have one question.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, it's straightforward, you're absolutely right, but just what happens, you pray all these prayers and there's a drought? Because I heard there's other things you could do to get rain.
A drought, you mean in the summer?
What you're doing this prayer so you get rain. So when you start the prayer to sometime in the future, when you say these prayers, there's a drought. You didn't get rain for Israel.
The question is the drought in the winter or in the summer? It's a difference.
Okay, tell me both, because I don't.
First of all, in general, the tkufa of Geshem is the winter. When we have all the fasts that are brought down in Masechtas Taanis about that they had these established, even till today we have. In Eretz Yisrael, we've had at least the Yom Tefillas for sure, special days of prayer for rain if it doesn't rain. I don't know if in Chutz La'aretz they've done it, but in Eretz Yisrael, in the 30 years I've been here, we've had more than once where we've gone through a very dry winter, and there's been some sort of program. I don't know if they fasted, but definitely special prayers that were instituted for rain prayer days. So that we would do in the winter. In the summer, we don't ask for rain, so it's not a time for rain. Now I know in Seattle, where I come from, where it rains very heavy in the winter usually. For some reason, growing up, I don't know if it's still today applicable. Growing up, we would have droughts in the summer, even though it rained the whole winter, and they would tell us, to monitor our showers, our washing machine, and that you weren't allowed to water your lawn, etc. But I don't know if that halachically I don't know if there's a source to establish. It's definitely not mentioned in Gemara Taanis to mention a special prayer day in the summer, because that's not the time we're asking for rain.
My rabbis have told me that these prayers are only for Israel. We're praying when Israel should get rain, not anything for the rest of the world.
But that's why also, because that's the question about the indifference. We're going to get there about if you're living in different places, like in Australia or South America, where they're on the other side of the equator. But the rain that we ask in the bracha Baruch Aleinu is we ask it in the tekufa. That's why we do it the 4th, 5th, or the 6th of December. That's not just for Eretz Yisrael, but there's some ideas that we should focus on Eretz Yisrael. But nevertheless, there's no days of rain that we ask or establish fasts or days of prayer for rain in the summer. It's only winter.
That's what I thought. But in the winter, so you've done it before.
We've done it here in Israel. I don't remember a fast. At least I didn't fast. I don't remember being a public fast day, but we definitely had days of prayer for rain. We've had certain. I mean, this year, if I'm not mistaken, we've had pretty heavy rain in the winter. My yard shows it so, but I think we had other years we had no rain, or very little rain. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Shvua Tov again next week. We're going to try again at this time. Laila Tov. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.